Hey guys, what's up? It is Tale of Two Dead Girls. Hi, I'm Kayla,
And I'm Kayle.
and this is our episode 27. Woo!
Lucky number 27. Isn't 27 a lucky number?
I don't know, I was just thinking that.
I don't know. I don't gamble. Just kidding.
We are at the end of November, so we were gone for a month, and I didn't even realize
Mm,
we were gone for a whole month. Holy cow. Oops.
yeah. Took a
Sorry,
short
guys.
break.
Hey, at least we put out a ton of little episodes during October. So,
Yeah, sometimes we just got to take some breaks, honestly. It's just one of those times. Holidays are crazy.
yeah, for sure. So, before we get started with our stories, Kale had something she wanted to
Yeah,
mention.
so I don't know if a lot of our listeners know about this, so I just wanted to bring it up. But I listened to a podcast called Jensen and Hole's The Murder Squad. I've mentioned it multiple times on our episodes, but I truly love them. Like, they're amazing. And their whole goal with their podcast is to try to get citizen sleuths to solve cold cases. So especially during this time, like if you have a lot of time on your hands, go through their episodes, look through their case files. You never know if you know something or you know somebody that might know something. But one thing that they talk about a lot, because one of the hosts is Paul Holes, and he's a retired cold case detective, and he actually is one of the detectives that helped catch the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo. The way that he caught him was he went through a profile using this system called GEDmatch, and basically what it does is it runs the DNA pools from suspects or like cold cases, like semen samples, blood, DNA, any type of DNA against the database in GEDmatch, and then it finds a match. So he found a really distant relative, but they matched the same DNA profile, and they were able to weed out who the exact relative was, and found out that it was Joseph D'Angelo. So if you're not familiar with the Golden State Killer, he committed 50 rapes and 10 to 12 murders, and he was in his late 70s when he was arrested last year. And I firmly believe that if he never ran this DNA through GEDmatch, that he probably would have never been caught. He probably would have just died and got to live the rest of his life out. But what I wanted to mention is that if you guys, I know a lot of people get the 23andMe kits or the Ancestry kits for Christmas or during the holidays. If you get those and you feel the need to submit your DNA profile, you can go through GEDmatch and you can submit those results through the GEDmatch website, and you can opt in for law enforcement to use that. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, I don't really like snitching on my family, but for me, it's like if someone in my family committed a murder or a rape, I would want them to get caught. Like, I would want them to do time for what they did. Like, if my family member was murdered, I would want the murderer caught, or I would want the rapist caught. Like, that would be super important to me. And there's been cases that are 60 plus years old that have been solved by this. So if you feel comfortable doing something like that, please do it. I mean, you never know who you could help. Some of the cases, the people that have put their DNA in, the person that got arrested, they don't even know. Like, it's a super distant relative that they had never even heard of on their grandma's side or something like that. So, it's a good chance you would never even know who that person is, but it could definitely help. So if you guys have questions, just DM us. Also check out Jensen and Holes, the Murder Squad. They're like my number one favorite podcast. So that's all I had. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it's super sick. I'm probably gonna do that. Well, actually, I'll tell my brother to do it because he did Ancestry, so we have his DNA done. So, and I do want to get mine,
Yeah.
even though I'm pretty sure it should be kind of like the same. I don't know, but
Yeah, I've never done it before, but I definitely want to, because the after the Golden State Killer was caught, it was like a privacy issue that GEDmatch didn't really clarify that it could be used for law enforcement, but the law enforcement also created pretty much like fake accounts to do it. So it
mm,
was like controversial at first, but that's why they have it now that you can opt in to do it. But Ancestry.com and 23andMe, they don't do it at all. They do not allow law enforcement to use their DNA profiles at all. So that's
mhm.
why you have to take the results that you get and then upload it into GEDmatch if you'd like to do that.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that's super sick. And if you have your DNA stuff done, definitely you should probably try to, send that in or upload it, whatever, because it could be really helpful. Okay, so I am going to be sharing some spooky things that happened or happen in the Freetown Fall River State Forest. Now, I did mention this forest in episode 24, and that's where I shared the story of the Fall River Cult murders. Um, so this is oh my gosh, 50,000, 5,000 acre forest. It's said to be cursed, and it's been on like multiple like top 10 haunted forests in America or whatever. And yep, so multiple murders and crimes have been committed here, as well as paranormal activity, UFO sightings, strange disappearances, abductions, mysterious orbs of light, and so much more. And with all of those strange occurrences and spooky happenings, the forest has become associated with what is called Bridgewater Triangle. And Bridgewater Triangle is an area about 200 square miles in southeastern Massachusetts, and this forest like is a part of that 200 square miles, and it is claimed to be a site of alleged paranormal phenomena, various Bigfoot-like sightings, thunderbirds, and giant snakes.
Giant snakes. Ugh. I hate
Spooky.
snakes.
Me too.
How do they move like that?
Ew, I don't know, and I don't want to think about it. Oh my god, wait, hold on. Speaking of snakes, when I was a kid, probably like, I don't know, 9 or 10, my dad caught a baby rattlesnake with his bare hands and put it in one of those gallon water bottles that you get from like Costco or whatever, and we kept it. And there was one time where he left it open, and I went and I saw it that it was open and there was no snake in there. And I was like, "Oh my god, Dad, what happened to the snake? It's open." And he scared all of us and was like, "Oh my god, I guess it got out, blah blah." But he actually like let it go or something. Um, but yeah, he like freaked us out. But yeah, he caught a freaking rattlesnake with his bare hands. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Mm-mm.
Okay, so anyways, in 1974, Ronald Reagan reported seeing strange lights in the sky when he was in the forest. And many people believe that Freetown Forest makes some people even like kill themselves. Um, oh goodness, I'm not sure how to say this. Puckwudgies, which are troll-like beasts. They're about 3 feet tall, and from another word I can't pronounce, Wampanoag. I don't know. I'm so sorry. It's a native tradition, and they are known to stalk the woods. There's signs on the roads throughout the forest to watch out for them. It'll say like Puckwudgies crossing and stuff like that. They can appear and disappear very quickly, and they're usually seen on the sides of the roads as motorbikers and cars pass by. They're also known to shoot poisonous arrows near and across the roadway. They have following traits and abilities, and they are pretty much masters at staying undetected in the forest. They can transform into animals like porcupines and stuff and create fire, and they can control spirits of their deceased victims.
Ooh, so they're like shapeshifters.
Yeah. Okay, so there's also an 80-foot deep rock lake area known as the Assinette Ledge, or simply the ledge. This area is associated with a whole bunch of weird stuff. There's numerous reports of people seeing ghosts jumping from the ledge, only to disappear when they hit the water. They disappear when they are just standing on top of the ledge. It is also the site of an infamous UFO sighting, which is the Ronald Reagan story. So he was at that area when he saw the lights in the sky.
So you mean like the President Ronald Reagan?
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. That's crazy.
yeah. Um, Ghost hunters have captured EVPs that said, "You will serve Satan." It said the names Doreen and Carl Drew. And if you guys listen to episode 24, you'll know that Doreen Levesque was one of the girls who was murdered by Carl Drew. Carl Drew, I think, is still alive though. So the spirit was probably Doreen saying that Carl Drew was her murderer. But they were a part of the Fall River cult murders that took place in the Freetown forest.
Dang, that's spooky.
Some of the crimes and murders committed were of Mary Lou Aruda in November of 1978. She was a 15-year-old cheerleader who was abducted from Raynham, Massachusetts in September of 1978. She was found in the Freetown forest tied to a tree. In 1980, police were approached by multiple locals who claimed to have seen satanic cult activity in the woods, and some believed that it might have been connected to the Fall River cult killings, which are what I shared in episode 24, since it was during the same time period. There's animal bloodstained clearings that were found in the forest, and also there were arranged carcasses of cattle. Another person was murdered in 1987 in this forest. Apparently, it was a homeless man who was mistaken for an undercover cop and was killed. In 2001, two men were found dead by gunshot wounds. In 1991, an assault was reported by a Fall River man, and another assault was reported by a teenager from Bedford in 1998. I'm not sure what kinds of assaults these were, but they weren't murdered, so that's good.
So essentially, this place is dangerous and not a stroll in the park.
Yeah, pretty much. In 2006, there were reports of aggressive abandoned dogs and even an escaped emu wandering the forest. And an emu, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but an
Emu? Yeah,
yeah, is like a giant ostrich looking thing. It's, giant bird.
big, scary fucking bird.
Yeah. In 2015, a woman slid 80 feet down a cliff while spray painting and broke her ankle and had to be rescued. In 2016, this is kind of like the most spookiest part for me, but in 2016, wires were found stretched across the trails, and it's believed that it was intended to catch off-road motorbikers across the neck and decapitate them.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it's very ghost ship esque.
Yeah, that's violent.
Yeah, so this
And they don't know like who
forest,
put those up. Sorry, they don't like know who put
no,
those up. Wow.
nope. But yeah, this forest is like, that's why they say it's cursed, because there's like a bunch of creepy shit that like happens. Um, and I couldn't find that much on like ghosts and other paranormal activity. Like, people, I just couldn't really find any like stories that people had. Um, But yeah, if you live in Massachusetts and you're near the Fall River area, I would say to check it out. I mean, it is kind of like a safe-ish forest. Just, I guess, don't go alone. I mean, it's a pretty popular area for people to hike and, ride their motorbikes or whatever. And there's like a lot of activities there. So yeah, just be careful if you go. But yeah, that's it.
I wonder what it looks like. Like, is there like trails? I want to like look it up online and see if there's like trails or like a pond or if it's like more secluded, like hiking type.
Well, it's
Uh,
giant. It's 2,000 acres. So
Damn. Yeah, so it's pretty fucking huge. So there might be like some like areas with like trails and like picnic tables or something, but I don't even know. Is there like mountains in Massachusetts?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's like one of those flat. I'm so bad with geography, but anyways. Um
Geography. Oh, Willow's in
yeah.
my room. He's licking my head. I hope he
Aw.
doesn't look out the window and start barking at any point because he is in my room and the window is open.
All right. So for my story, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite mysteries, and this is the mystery of DB Cooper or Dan Cooper. So I don't know if you have heard of this, Kayla. Have you?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a crazy thing. So, all right, on Wednesday, November 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, which is actually kind of weird. I didn't plan for this.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I didn't realize it was like around there, but you know what? It's fitting. Anyways, in 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a nicely dressed 6 foot tall man in a dark suit and tie boarded the Northwest Airlines Flight 305 that was going from Portland to Seattle. The man went by the alias of Dan Cooper, or more widely known as DB Cooper. The man purchased the ticket with cash. He was seated in the middle seat on the last row of the plane. He ordered a bourbon and had a cigarette because in the 70s you could smoke on planes.
Wow. What a time.
No, that's horrible.
No, but like for the people that, because I used to smoke cigarettes, so like if I was stressed out and I needed a cigarette, how fucking amazing would it be to like be able to smoke on a plane?
Yeah,
That's
true.
sick.
I guess like back then pretty much everybody smoked too, so no one was really bothered
Yeah,
by it.
yeah. But now cigarettes are bad. Don't smoke.
Yeah. Cigarettes are bad, okay?
Okay.
Um, Once the flight was clear for departure, DB Cooper turned around and handed a flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, an envelope. Inside the envelope was a note that said, "I have a bomb here and I would like you to come sit by me." The flight attendant sat next to the man and looked into his briefcase and saw what she believed to be several sticks of dynamite and a box with flashing lights and wires connected to the dynamite.
Oh no.
As she sat next to him, Cooper started giving her demands, and his demands were quite simple. He requested $200,000 in cash to be put in a knapsack, 4 parachutes, 2 front and 2 back parachutes, a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane at landing. And to explain a little bit the reasoning behind, well, at least the or suspected reasoning behind why he wanted 4 parachutes is because he was thinking that if he only requested 1 or 2, that the authorities might tamper with them. But by asking for 4, the authorities had to take into consideration that there was possible hostages because it was like a fucking plane full of people and like
Yeah.
crew. So DB finished his demands by saying, "No funny stuff or I'll do the job." Schaffner went and informed the rest of the crew of what was happening, and Tina Mucklow sat next to Cooper for the remainder of the flight. She used a telephone that was connected to the back of the plane to communicate with the rest of the flight crew, and 3 hours after departure on what should have only been a 30-minute flight, the plane landed in Seattle. The
Wait, why
money
did it take 3 hours?
well, because they had to get the demands ready for him. So they had to contact the authorities, like the FBI and everything, and be like, "Hey, we have like a skyjacking going on. These are the things that he needed." And so like he wanted like a fuel refueling to be done when they landed and everything so they could take off again.
Oh, what the
Yeah.
hell? This is very bizarre.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite mysteries, but all right. So the money and the parachutes were handed to Tina Mucklow, who then brought the items to Cooper. And once Cooper received the demands, he let 2 flight attendants and the remaining 36 passengers off of the plane. And shockingly enough, many of the passengers had no idea what was going on or that the plane had been hijacked. So I
Wow.
just think about that and I'm like, the fact that they were on a 3 hour flight, like, what the fuck did they tell them? Were
Yeah.
they just like radioing over and being like, "Hey, we're just having some delays"? Like,
Maybe they like sprayed stuff into the plane that like made everyone fall asleep.
I don't think so. I feel like that would have been mentioned.
Oh, probably,
But
yeah.
also that could have made DB Cooper fall asleep and then the skyjacking wouldn't have happened. Nah, I'm pretty sure they probably just told them like, "Oh, we're just having some difficulties," or like weather or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. Apparently they
Yeah.
just flew around in like circles for a while, like over where they were supposed to land.
Oh my
Um
gosh.
Anyways, so after the passengers were let go, Cooper then instructed the remaining 4 flight crew to head toward Mexico City with some obscure flight requests. So The first request was that they were to fly with the landing gear down and the flaps at 15 degrees. They were also to fly below 10,000 feet, and the lights in the cabin were to be switched off, and the stairway under the plane was to be extended. So there was a stairway under the plane, and he wanted it to like stay down while they were flying. So two requests were obviously not able to be met. First of all, it would have been impossible to make a nonstop flight from Seattle to Mexico City without refueling.
Mhm.
So Cooper agreed to make one fuel stop in Reno, Nevada. And the second request was that the staircase could not be left extended because that would like you wouldn't be able to fucking fly with that. It would make it like hard with the air going in at how fast you have to go. So Mucklow agreed to stand by and show Cooper how to release the staircase whenever he was ready. So he learned how to do it himself so that he could just let it down whenever he needed. So after almost 2 hours, the flight finally took off again, and this time it was towards Reno, Nevada. About 5 minutes into the flight, Cooper told Mucklow to head for the cockpit, and from this point onward, he did not want to be disturbed. So the last time that Mucklow saw Cooper, she said that he was standing in the middle of the aisle, and when Mucklow joined the rest of the crew in the cockpit, she locked the door behind her, and 3 hours later, the flight landed safely in Reno. So once the flight came to a stop, the crew went into the plane and saw that Cooper was gone. The flight upstairs had been extended and was slightly damaged from landing. As soon as it was realized that Cooper was no longer on the plane, the FBI began a manhunt. They boarded the plane but weren't able to find too much evidence. What they found was a black JCPenney clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and 2 of the 4 parachutes. So the flight attendants were interviewed, and they said that Cooper was nice and polite for the most part, and that he was described as a Caucasian male with brown eyes and dark hair. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, and he was wearing a dark trench coat, dark suit, a white shirt, a black tie, and dark shoes. Soon after boarding, he also put on a pair of sunglasses. So the sketches that you'll see, most of them do have him with sunglasses on because he had them on pretty much the entire flight. The FBI had to figure out when exactly Cooper jumped out of the plane, but the odd thing was that none of the flight crew on the plane saw Cooper jump out, and neither did two fighter jets that were flying closely by to escort the flight. It's not surprising though, because considering by this time it was around 8 o'clock at night and it was dark outside.
What if he's a time traveler?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
The flight crew did remember checking on him at approximately 8:05 p.m., asking if he needed anything, and he said no. A few moments after that, the crew felt a vibration of the plane. So recreations over the years of the flight and the staircase being released showed that Cooper had jumped at approximately 8:07 p.m. Because they did like a recreation where they let the staircase down and like the crew felt the same kind of vibrations or whatever that they felt.
Mm-hmm.
So the other issue was where Cooper had actually jumped. So even though he had a specific request for where he wanted to go, he left it up to the pilot for which flight route to take. So, in the sky, there's like a million different routes that you can take to get to your destination. So he just let the pilot pretty much just take it wherever he wanted to.
What? He couldn't just pay for a different flight
No.
to take him where he needed to go?
Well, he wanted to go to Mexico City, but they weren't able to fly from Seattle to Mexico City on one tank of gas. So they had to stop in Reno to fuel up and then go to Mexico City. But the flight from Seattle to Reno, he pretty much was just like, I don't care how we get there, just get there. And so the pilot, there's like a bunch of different options that you can take to get there, kind of like when you're driving, you can take a bunch of different routes. So the pilot decided to take a route named Victor 23. So based off of the route, the estimated time of the jump, they expected Cooper to be around 25 miles from Portland. So a search party involving helicopters, airplanes, and ground troops was formed. Locating Cooper's exact drop point was almost impossible. There was dense wilderness, cold temperatures, bad weather, and rough terrain. So despite their best efforts, the authorities were unable to find a single trace of Cooper or any items that he took on the jump with him.
He just disappeared.
Yeah, pretty much. By December, with no leads, authorities decided to reach out to the public for help. The $200,000 ransom was collected from the Seattle First National Bank, which maintained a ransom package of $250,000 for these exact occasions. So this is basically $250,000 that's set aside in case there's ever a ransom that needs to be met so that the police can use that money to give it. And because this
Wow.
is like an allotted amount that's set aside, the serial numbers for every single bill was documented.
Wow.
So you can actually still see the documentation online too.
Wow.
So the list was released to the public and to all financial institutions, government agencies, pretty much everywhere. The intention was to make it as difficult as possible for Cooper to actually spend the money, but in spite of these efforts, nobody ever reported any of the bills. But
Wow.
dot dot dot. In 1980, nearly a decade later, a boy named Brian Ingram was building a fire on a small beach in southern Washington. As he was digging into the sand, he found 3 bundles of cash totaling in $5,880.
Oh my gosh.
So, having heard about the infamous skyjacking, his parents promptly took the bills to the police. And after inspecting the serial numbers, it was confirmed that those bills were part of the ransom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So, after the excitement wore off, confusion started mounting at this point because the money was found almost 17 miles away from where the initial drop zone was expected to be, and there was a couple ideas that maybe the money floated down the Columbia River, but it was found pretty obviously that the Columbia River's water flowed the opposite way.
Mhm.
So from where the drop point was to where the money was found, it was like downwards, but the water flowed the upwards. So there was like no possible way that it could have just floated down there. So when Ingram discovered the bundles, the rubber bands on the bundles were still completely intact. And in 2009, experiments showed that this brand of rubber bands could not stand exposure to open air or water for more than a year. So this means that the money must have been buried within a year of the skyjacking, and the most
Oh
probable,
my god.
yeah, it's crazy. It's like, what? So the most probable explanation is that Cooper or somebody else buried the money in that specific area. There was something I read about. There was like soil deposits that were put at this beach from like a different beach. So some people were like, "Oh, well, what if you guys like scooped it up with that sand off of that beach and put it on this beach?" But it eventually was ruled out because the sand that they had taken, it was like a little bit further away from where the money was actually buried.
Mm,
So that was like ruled out.
yeah.
Um, After Ingram found the money, numerous searches happened over the years, but to date, there has been no further evidence or money found. So the only money out of the $200,000 was that 580 or $5,880,000. I
Wait,
don't know how
what?
to say that.
What? Five
Five
hundred thousand, eighty
five thousand.
thousand.
What the hell?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So, so out of the $200,000 that he got, only $5,880 was ever found. From the beginning, investigators speculated that Cooper did not survive the landing. When he jumped, there was a frigid rainstorm, violent winds, and he was also 10,000 feet above Washington. Cooper was extremely underdressed for the occasion. It was also nighttime, and cloud coverage was fairly heavy.
Oh my
So,
god. He
another
probably did.
yeah. So but that's the weird thing is that how could the money have been buried there if he died?
Someone found it.
I don't know. Could be.
Oh, well, yeah, then why would they go and bury the money? Like,
Yeah, like a
what
year.
the
It
heck?
had to be buried within a year of the skyjacking, and it wasn't found 10 until like 10 years later. So it's like, why would you find $5,000, bury it, and then never go back for it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
the parachute that Cooper used was also actually a non-steering parachute, which means that when he jumped, he would not have been able to control the parachute towards a specific landing spot. So he would have just landed wherever the winds would have taken him.
Oh my goodness.
So another thing that's been thrown in is that if you remember, Cooper asked for 4 parachutes.
Yeah.
So the authorities, they did fall for his trick, which is what they assume was that they assumed that he was going to try to take hostages. So they provided all 4, but they accidentally provided Cooper with a dummy parachute that was only used for training purposes. Yeah. So the dummy parachute, along with one other real parachute, were the ones that were missing from the plane. Cooper also took the older parachute between the two provided. So, okay, so there was one regular parachute, one dummy parachute, and then there was one that was older and then one that was like really new. And he took the dummy and the new, or the older one. So they were like,
Wait, so
okay,
why didn't he take all four?
well, he only asked for all four because he wanted to trick the authorities. Because if he only
Oh,
asked for
okay.
one parachute, he assumed that they would like give him one that doesn't work so that they could like arrest him, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he was like, if I ask for four, they're going to assume that I'm going to take one of the flight crews and they can't
Yeah.
risk like killing an innocent bystander. So,
Mhm.
but this whole time, everybody thought, okay, if he's asking for parachutes, like he's gonna jump out of a fucking plane, like he must know like what he's doing. He must have experience with like skydiving or jumping out of planes or like military experience. But because he chose a dummy parachute and the older parachute out of the others, they kind of assumed that maybe he didn't actually have as much skills as they thought he did because any
Mhm.
trained person would know what a dummy parachute looked like. So,
Ooh.
assuming that Cooper did survive the fall, he would have had to make a long trek through a dense forest with partial snow cover and cold November temperatures in only a trench coat and some loafers. So that's also kind of like, okay, if he did land, like, how did he survive like the hike from wherever he landed? Because it was snowing, it was cold, it was dense
Yeah.
forest, like it was like in the middle of the forest, so there's no trails really. Like authorities never received any missing persons reports that matched Cooper's description, so it does leave open the possibility that he did survive and just resumed his normal life.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so over the years, thousands of suspects were questioned. One of the first few FBI investigated was a man in Portland with the initials DB and last name Cooper. He was quickly eliminated as a suspect, but due to the misinformation given to the press, the name Dan Cooper was confused for DB Cooper, and so that's where the nickname DB Cooper came from. So one of the news outlets posted like a front page article on the newspaper that was like DB Cooper, and that's kind of like where the name stuck, even though that guy was like innocent.
Wait, so the real guy is not even DB Cooper?
Yeah, his name is Dan Coop. Well, okay, so we don't even know. Like, obviously, that's not his real name. Like, he used a
Yeah.
fake name because back then, buying a plane ticket was like
Oh.
super easy. You just fucking like, there's pictures of it, and he literally just wrote Dan Cooper on it and like paid cash.
Wait, so that's not his name?
Yeah, I mean, at least it's assumed
Oh.
that that's not his real name because there's never been any like Dan Coopers ever really found
Oh my
that
god,
have
that's
like,
insane.
yeah. But there was one person in Portland named DB Cooper. And so they were like, oh, DB Cooper, Dan Cooper, like, oh, that could be the same guy. So they like interviewed him, but he was ruled out as a suspect. But the press got the wrong information. And so they wrote like a newspaper article saying like DB Cooper. I don't remember the exact wording, but it said something like DB Cooper, the skyjacker, or something like that. And
Mhm.
so the nickname just stuck.
Mhm.
So, um, another famous suspect was Robert Rackstraw. They looked very similar, and Robert had a military background and parachute experience. He had experience with explosives, and he had a criminal record, and he had an uncle named John Cooper.
Oh
Yeah, so he was
my
expelled.
god, it was him.
So he was expelled from the army 5 months before the skyjacking. When he was interviewed, he would never confirm or deny that he was DB Cooper. On the other
Wait,
hand, he was
he
only 20.
wouldn't deny? Oh my
Yeah,
god,
apparently.
it was totally him.
Okay, well, we're gonna talk about like five, I
Oh
think
my
five
god.
suspects.
God damn it. I'm gonna be like, "Oh my god, it was him. It was him," with every
Yeah,
single person I watch.
this is the weirdest thing is that like all of the suspects, they seem like they could have been it. It's
Oh my
weird,
god.
but it only gets more confusing. So,
Ah.
so on the other hand was that Robert Rackstraw was only 28 and he had light colored eyes, not brown eyes. So the flight staff was like, well, it doesn't look like him. Plus, you know, he was like super young compared to the guy that they remembered seeing because they said that DB Cooper looked like he was in his 40s.
Hmm.
So another suspect is Kenneth Christiansen, and he became a suspect when his brother noticed similarities in the suspect sketch and Kenneth. Christiansen also had a military background, and he worked as a flight attendant in his past. He was 45 years old, and on his deathbed, he supposedly told his brother There is something you should know, but I can't tell you. After his death, his family found out that he had a little over $200,000 in his bank account, and the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, said that he looked very similar to the skyjacker.
Mm.
On the other hand, he was shorter than the description of D.B. Cooper. Kenneth had less hair, and there was nothing suspicious about the money in his bank account. Apparently, he had just sold some land, so
Oh.
he was also ruled out as a suspect, pretty much. Like, he's still like a person of interest.
Yeah. Mm.
So, Richard McCoy Jr. became a suspect in 1972 after he committed a skyjacking that was eerily similar to Cooper. So, aside from him looking similar to the sketch of Cooper, he also used the stairway under the plane to escape. He used a fake grenade, a fake name, and handwritten notes. He also used the term no funny stuff, the same as Cooper. He also had military experience as a pilot. He survived the jump and evaded authorities for 2 days before being arrested and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Before his death, he refused to admit or deny that he was D.B. Cooper. The only thing that kind of ruled him out was that all 3 flight attendants that were interviewed were certain that he was not Cooper. So,
Oh my god, this one sounded so like it could have been him.
I know, so
That's so
promising.
crazy.
So a lot of people think that he was just a copycat of Cooper because it happened like a year after, and
Oh
he used a lot of the same things. And obviously, this case was like super famous when it happened.
yeah.
Yeah, so the flight attendants, they were pretty much the ones that were like the final factor of being like, nah, this doesn't look anything like the guy. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so the next one is Dwayne Weber. He became a suspect in 1995 when he told his wife on his deathbed, I have a secret to tell you. I am Dan Cooper.
Oh hell no.
So, following his death, his widow recalled a lot of chilling details. She claims at one point she did find a bank bag that resembled the one used in the skyjacking. She said Dwayne claimed he injured his knee by jumping out of a plane and that he would frequently have nightmares about leaving his fingerprints on the staircase.
Oh my god.
He also had a military background, a criminal record, and he was 47 years old in 1971.
Oh my god.
He did resemble the sketch as well. So the only
But
thing...
yeah,
Huh?
what is it? Like but
But the only thing was that his fingerprints and DNA did not match the DNA that was collected at the scene.
oh my
But
god.
But part 2, there is also no way to prove if the DNA collected at the scene was actually Cooper's, because in 1971, they only took fingerprints of the staircase and the seats and the doors. So that could have matched literally anyone on that freaking plane.
Yeah.
And the most frustrating thing is that they had 8 cigarette butts and they did not keep them for evidence.
Oh my
Because
god,
at this time,
idiots.
because at this time they didn't test stuff like that for DNA.
Oh my god.
So they had like one of the most
It was him.
I don't know, but like they
It was
had
him.
I just go back to the cigarette butts because like saliva is like one of the most convincing DNA like profiles, and they didn't keep the fucking cigarette butts. So
They were like, they didn't think about, oh, maybe in the future our DNA testing would expand and we'd have better systems for it.
I
Idiots.
know. Yeah, so I mean, I did read like a couple of sources, so this could be a little bit different. I don't know if they actually kept the cigarette butts for a while and then disposed of them or what, but yeah, so his DNA did not match the fingerprints at the scene, but again, there's also no way to prove if the DNA collected was Cooper's because we have no DNA profile for Cooper. So,
I think it was him.
yeah, I don't know. He's the most convincing to me because to leave that, like, unless he was like a jokester type of guy.
Be like, hey, I'm dying. Haha, I'm Dan Cooper.
Yeah, like, unless you're like a jokester type of like, you know, person and you want to just like leave your life on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I don't really know like why someone would do that to their wife on their deathbed because
I
that's
think
like
it was him. Oh my god, I think it was him.
yeah,
Ah!
that's the guy that's most convincing to me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, on July 8th, 2016, after 45 years, one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations the FBI has ever spent time on, the case was finally closed and the FBI announced that it will no longer be investigated. So, if you have tips or whatever, like if you actually find information, I'm sure that they will still investigate it, but they're no longer spending time trying to find who this guy is.
Yeah.
They are keeping the evidence preserved for historical purposes. And DB Cooper is one of the most intriguing mysteries to me because we will most likely never know what happened or who he actually was. And that's just like insane to me. Like the
Yeah.
fact that they have searched those woods over and over, there was no parachutes found, no body, like no evidence, no money other than that $5,000. Like, where did the money go? Like, where is it? Where is he? Like,
Yeah.
who was this?
That's some weird shit. I think okay, it's for me, I think it was that guy that died or it's a time traveler. It
Yeah,
has
and
to
the weird
be.
thing is that the sketch, like, it reminds you of like Men in Black
Ew, I
because he's
hate
wearing
that.
like a suit and sunglasses, and
Maybe it's an alien.
yeah, I don't know, man. It's so crazy. Like that,
Oh.
the DB Cooper mystery and the Dyatlov Pass mystery are two of my favorite ones of all
Oh my
time.
god, yeah, that one was really good.
Yeah,
Wow, this was very, like, intriguing.
yeah. The fact that I think it's cool to think about the fact that like if he lived and just like lived his life, that he just like fucking robbed a plane, jumped out of it, like lived somehow and just got $200,000. Like two hundred
What a
thousand dollars
dream.
back then was like a lot. Like I want to see. Let's see.
Yeah,
What
that's he
was
lived
200?
the dream life. He's like, "Damn, look, I'm so badass. I just did all this shit, and I'm alive with $200,000."
Dude, okay. So I just looked it up. In other words, $200,000 in 1971 is equivalent to purchasing power to about $1,285,333 in 2020.
Holy shit.
So he got like in today's money like $1.2 million dollars. Like so back in
Jeez.
1971, that was $200,000 was a fuckload of money.
Yeah, that's insane. Wow. Well, we want to hear who you guys think did it or what you guys think happened. Like like was he a time traveler? Was he an alien? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, in the interviews, he did tell Florence that he had a grudge, but he didn't say what it was against or why he had a grudge. But he just said, I have a grudge. And so that's why some people think that he was military or had something against like the military or the flight like itself or like the airline or whatever. So they did explore like workers and everything like that. But yeah, so if you happen to know who DB Cooper is, just tell us. We won't tell anyone.
We
Who
promise.
else has a family deathbed confession?
We
There
just
have
want to
been
know.
apparently there have been quite a few deathbed confessions, but these were the most likely or the most heavily investigated.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm glad that you hadn't heard about that so that it was like new for you.
Yeah, it was so sick. I loved it.
Thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you sticking through and through with us for our long breaks. And, we always say that every episode, but we do love you guys. And we have been horrible at social media, but please follow us on Instagram, Tale of Two Dead Girls. And if you have spooky stories, please email them to us at taleoftwodeadgirls@gmail.com. But as always, thanks for listening, and we'll meet you 6 feet under.